Dear ICCS members and friends, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar session on business resilience and post-pandemic opportunities. My name is Carola Capone and I'm the Marketing Executive at ICCS. Welcome to everyone once again. Today, we will have as speakers 4 young entrepreneurs who are going to share with us their experience about how different new ways of approaching and servicing the market during these hard times. And if you guys would like to put your videos on so I can start the introduction. And today's, we will have, in fact, Carlo, which is also the founder and CEO at Service Zero, our partner today for this event. Then we will have a contribution also from Bess Habutwang, who's the Vice President of Business Development at Igloo Company. Then Cynthia Kim, co-founder and chief marketing officer at Venurific, and then finally Sean Liao, who is the founder and CEO at Imaginato. Thank you for the speakers to be with us today. So at the beginning, we will give the speakers like a couple of minutes to introduce themselves and also the company they're working at, and then we will move straight away to the round table. And now, of course, everybody, if you feel to write any kind of question and ask any kind of question to the speaker, feel free to do so in the Q&A button below, and then we will address your question right after this conversation. So without any further ado, I shall now leave the word to Carl, who will start today's webinar. Thank you. Oh, Carl, you're still mute?
Okay. Yes, thanks, Carola. Thanks for the kind introduction and the invitation to speak to the Italian community in Singapore. So hi, everyone. My name is Carl. I'm the CEO and founder of Service Hero, an on-demand mobile app that delivers home and office services across Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. So I guess if any of you guys are ever in need of a cleaner, a plumber, or an electrician, you can go to servicehero.com, download our app, and our technicians will be with you in a jiffy. So I'm pretty excited to talk on this webinar about business resilience, because for our business, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, very adversely affected. Obviously, our ability to deliver home services to people's homes couldn't be done for a large portion of the last year. So I'm happy to share my thoughts about what we did in reaction to into the pandemic and how we found new opportunities.
Thank you, Carl. So now it's the turn for Bess to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, I think, or good morning for those of you who are calling in from elsewhere. So my name is Bess. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at Igloo Company. So we're based here in Singapore. This is our headquarters. So at Igloo Company, we believe in a vision of a world without keys. So what that means is we deliver smart access solutions for homes, for properties, for various infrastructure. We've been around since 2016, and up until now, we've shipped our products to over 100 different countries around the world. And I think similar to Carl, we were also adversely quite affected by the pandemic. I think largely because we're actually moving hardware. The logistics sector and the shipping halts actually had a huge impact in the way we were running our businesses. So happy to share a little bit more later on like how we sort of came about that and the pivots we had to make. Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Bess. And I shall now leave the word to Cynthia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Cynthia, and I'm the co-founder of a company called Venurific. So Venurific is actually an event marketplace of different venues where you can book a venue for your celebration. So whether it be a birthday party or a company seminar. We started 8 years back in 2013. In Singapore, and then expanded to Malaysia, Hong Kong, Philippines, and Indonesia. So in terms of business resilience, of course, events industry was also one of the hardest hit industries. So I'll be sharing more about my challenges and our company challenges and how we actually overcame them. So thank you for having me.
And last but not least, Sean, it's your turn.
Hi, thanks, Carola. Good to be here. My name is Sean. I run a company called Imaginato. Been running this for about 8 years now. It's based in China, but also now headquartered in Singapore. Essentially, we are a tech development partner. So we help companies to innovate, developing their platforms, their tech, their apps. A lot of consumers, so B2C, B2B. And it's interesting to see, especially in this talk today, about the impact that the pandemic has had and how important it has been to be agile, but with what tech, what part it plays, a lot of the things that we've been doing, and even we're being hit. It'll be good to share about kind of what we've seen and how we see going forward, how it will kind of fit the future of post-pandemic.
Thank you, Sean, and actually thank you everyone for giving this brief introduction. Okay, now let's move to the deep to this conversation, because we're all curious to hear about your experience and also the difficulties you've been facing during this pandemic. So let's move to the first question. It is like, how was your business before the outbreak of the pandemic, and which challenges your company had to face after? Who wants to go first? Let's start from Carl. Would you like to break the ice?
Yeah, sure. So ServiceServe has been operating since 2015. We started in Malaysia before expanding to the other countries across Southeast Asia, and our business has originally been focused on delivering services to people's homes. Now, obviously, the pandemic had a great impact to our ability to deliver on our service proposition. We literally couldn't go into people's homes at all, right, during the lockdowns. The pandemic presented us a kind of faceted kind of challenges. One, we had issues around labor supply. So in markets that we operate in where we're heavily reliant on foreign labor on our marketplace or our marketplace partners, such as in Malaysia and in Singapore, because of restrictions of movement, a lot of our marketplace partners, which relied on foreign labor, were not able to provide them to deliver services. In other markets, in Thailand, that was lesser affected because there was the kind of blue collar workforce is very much local. So that was the first kind of challenge, kind of limitations on our supply of labor, and as well as being able to service the original segment of home consumers. We took a pretty swift action in about April last year, when the first wave of lockdowns and movement restrictions came in, and we decided that this pandemic, we made the call that this pandemic was going to have a very kind of a long impact, right? So initially when they announced the lockdowns, I think leaders across the region were saying, hey, there's going to be kind of movement controls for the next 2 weeks. But from the trends that we had seen over the last 3 months, I made the call and delivered to the news to my organization that I predicted that this was going to be something that was going to impact at least the whole of 2020. And we knew that if we were not able to shift away from providing cleaning and plumbing, electrical handyman services to consumers, we'd be dead. So we knew that the only way to continue operating was to become an essential services company. So in April of 2020, we spun out a whole new business unit called Disinfection2U. And Disinfection2U repurposed a lot of the existing workers that we had on our platform. So we've got about 4,000 workers that are registered on the platform, and they were largely doing things like cleaning, aircon, servicing, aircon installations. And we retrained them to become disinfection specialists. That obviously became something that was in high demand across all the countries that we operated in. And fortunately, it allowed us to operate the business despite lockdowns. So in all of the markets that we operated, we were able to get exceptions to operate our services business because we were an essential services company. So people that were on our platform that were, let's say, aircon service people, we were able to allow them to continue earning income by getting them trained to become disinfection specialists and then deploying them on site. So that was the big kind of shift that we had in our business as soon as the pandemic started. In addition to that, there were other kind of innovations and opportunities that came out. I won't talk about that now because Carola, I know you have some questions coming up around that, but that was the immediate impact for us. The kind of crunch on labor supply and the restrictions of movement that we had to immediately react to. Yeah.
Anyway, don't worry. If we have time, you can still add a couple of comments and thoughts about this. So, okay, actually, I wanted to ask you also about the training. So, the training has been a very important thing for your company. And you did actually a very swift change, because if you started a new business right in, when you say March or April 2020, so it was kind of immediate. So, yeah, was a good move.
Yeah, no, we were fortunate enough to work with some more experienced partners. So some of the partners or heroes that we have on our platform had pre-existing skills when it came to disinfection. They were able to train us, and then we were able to scale this out across various non-disinfection technicians. So very lucky that within our pre-existing network, there were a few people that knew how to do disinfection. We're able to then transfer those skills across to other vendors on the platform.
Thank you. And moving to, let's say, Cynthia, how was then your business before? And then what were, of course, the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so events were happening on a daily basis before the pandemic. So Singapore especially is an events hub. So a lot of people fly into Singapore to host events as well. So we were facing huge demand. But of course, with the pandemic, events were put on full stop, and Singapore government is very strict about their regulations. So it was on full stop, which means, cash reserves is the first thing that we were thinking about as a challenge, right? There's a specific runway that we have, and with no additional potential revenue that could come in, how can we actually cut costs to preserve while keeping every team member with us? So I think that was the biggest first challenge that we had to think about, and had to cut costs in any way that we can, whether it's software subscriptions or small things that we could find to conserve cost. And secondly, I think the second challenge was also because right then we had expanded into Kuala Lumpur with an office and new hires. So it was an exciting time for us to begin our new journey. But of course, we had to face the reality and close it down as well. The third challenge that I can think of is also how, not only we were struggling as well as a business, but we worked with a marketplace of different vendors or venues that are listed with us. So these venues were, facing no additional revenue, or some of these venues actually rely 100% on making revenue from events as well. So they had to face the reality that they cannot make any money for the next few months. So we decided to offer them, complimentary subscription to our software, which also came at a hard yet sort of an easy decision-making process, because it's hard in a sense because it will be affecting our retention rate of our customers later on when they finish subscribing to our software. It will delay by a few months or so, but also easy in a sense because we started our business to help these venues who are struggling to make additional revenue, and events was a source of that revenue that could really help them with extreme rental rates and highly manpower costs in Singapore. So, we came to a decision to help them through this challenge as well. So another thing, I think the last thing that I really want to share is we actually ventured into another business as well, like Carl. It was a very quick jump. We ventured into something called the virtualbackground.com. So you see this background here. It's not animated, but we have a productions company in-house. So they are creative people of animators and editors. So they are able to make the background move. Mine is not moving today, but basically we set up this site where people can purchase cool backgrounds when they host virtual meetings and whatnot. But it was a very short-lived, I would say, venture. especially because we realized that the demand quite died down very quickly. So we focus instead on to building our CRM software. So the customer relationship management tool, we really drilled down onto building that on the back end to support our venue partners who could really manage their events from end to end. And this, a management tool actually got pre-approved by the Singaporean government, which means government supports 80 to 98% of the funding of this management tool. So any new potential customer who wants to subscribe to our software only pays 2 to 20%. So that support after the challenge actually really helped us out a lot.
Thank you, Cynthia, for sharing your experience. Let's move to Sean. How was then your business before and which challenge you faced?
Yeah, so our business is, it's a global business. So we got to see how it was impacting as it pandemic kind of rolled over the world, and starting from China too, and the Asia area, where we saw little by little, well, quickly, how the guys that were prepared and how that impacted their need for tech. In our case, if you're a well-funded company, it was, you're in a better position to continue to work with us. So the guys that were not prepared, they were already tight. Maybe they weren't so good about their finances. They were quicker to kind of cut ties. So we definitely saw in the beginning, demand was strong coming into that, into the pandemic. And actually it was quite hopeful, saying that, okay, everyone's heading towards digital. Everyone's going to go to digital transformation. Even the big guys are investing huge into transforming, their current old, architecture. But then, once we saw, in early last year, even from China, as soon as the hint of these things started happening, we saw demand for the, services dropping. We were trying to save some of this by offering, whether it's free or kind of additional services. In some cases it worked, but in many cases there's just no choice. They just had to cut. And so, at that point, we were already starting to scramble and trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Are we going to have to cut people? Are we going to have to, hold back on certain, bonuses or whatever? So instead, we decided to kind of invest anyway, stuff that we were planning to do. We said, what, we're going to go ahead and do stuff for free. We're going to build out, it's R&D we would have done. Let's just go ahead and do it. And we're going to do it for free for somebody. Somebody's going to get this on the house from our company, but it's our IP. So it was a perfect time to kind of pull the trigger on this sort of R&D, which fast forward to today, it's paying off, because we were positioned today to actually offer apps or kind of tools or platform things that are already built and we can monetize today. But back then it was kind of, you don't know. But we were also doing pro bono kind of tech for good initiatives, from a PR standpoint. So, we want to be part of that whole movement. So it was kind of all wrapped in together. Also at that time, just happened to be launching our kind of on-demand service. So just about that time, the decision to kind of launch the software developers on demand, kind of like Uber or AWS, where you could just get this developer on a platform. The timing was actually perfect, because now instead of kind of contracting for a whole team and going to a contract for services, you can now just get a developer for a month or 3 months, get something done and then end it. And we actually launched that in April of last year. And so that was kind of, I won't say a pivot, because we still do Imaginado, but we're also not doing JetDevs. And now we're seeing how the shift towards this on-demand is actually pretty quick. It's moving faster, and I believe that would be the kind of majority of our business in the next year or two.
Thank you, Sean. I mean, you have been all very quick, in responding to this emergency. I'm really amazed. Thank you guys for sharing this, all your thoughts. And I think last one is Best. So.
Of course, yeah. So for Igloo company, because we're I think similar to what Sean started off, right? Like we're global. So I think for the first few weeks, even like up to a month or two, we were just like listening to what was happening from our partners, because we have like partners all around. And then our impact in business obviously took a hit in the first month, but before we reacted, we were also like trying to listen to what everyone else had to say, what we should be doing as a brand, right? Like to help support them in the different markets. So through sort of listening to that, right? Like what we had to do, at least at the commercial front, was pull out a couple of the pilot deals. Like so we had a lot of trials and proof of concepts going into 2019 and early 2020. And these were those kind of deals that you really need to like spend time down there, talk to them, sit in front of them and see it through. Like we knew that was not going to happen. So we had to put a pause on that like pretty much immediately. At the same time, we were looking out for more industries and use cases that one would be faster to digitize, and then two had a shorter like decision like process making lead time. And then so as a result of sort of going through that, I think within the next like month or so, we decided that we were gonna throw in a lot of resources to focus on the US market, largely because they were already very, very keen on like digitization. So we were lucky that we already had a team there. And so we identified a couple of use cases, right? Say for example, like the real estate industry. Home ownership and like transaction last year was like an all-time high, despite what everyone came to think or anticipated. So we rode that wave. We essentially started offering like smart log access solutions and like pivoted our software a little bit to integrate into like platforms that would help like real estate agents do like virtual showing, help people who are trying to like flip their house and homes to be able to like do that remotely without actually having to be in contact with another person, like their buyer, for instance. So we did that. At the same time, we also started going into it in a lot more like sharing economy spaces. Like, well, eventually we realized that there were a lot of resurgences in people who want to do outdoor activities, like sharing of bikes, sharing of kayaks, all these like rental businesses. So we just started, like our team internally moved really fast. So like within the business development and the marketing team, we started like turning out a lot of assets and like case studies, and I just kept throwing them up to give people ideas, like people, businesses, right? Especially small to medium businesses who need ideas on how to survive, start looking at us for solutions. I think so that's what we did, right? And that's on the demand side. On the supply side, I think because we're a bit unique here in which we're in the hardware space, we're actually shipping like physical goods. We did have quite a bit of a hiccup when it came to shipping cost, as well as just like the scheduling of the freight and the containers that were leaving from the Far East out to that side of the world. It was just a lot of hiccups, right? So we had to obviously like adapt to that as well, change the way we shipped, like load more containers, took bigger risks on like on credit, and it just loaded more container, like build out that sort of supply and then get it out there. So I suppose that those were a couple of things that we did, at least I can share from Igloo Company and the commercial front. Yeah.
Yes, can I ask you a question? That was because I think out of all the participants, the thing that was really different about your strategy was the listening part. And you said you spent a lot of time listening before you reacted.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how much time did you spend listening before you reacted? Which is just so different from actually Servicero's kind of strategy, which was basically we just kind of seen what had happened in the last 3 months, and when the first lockdown came, I just was like, hey guys, we just gotta move. We just gotta make any decision right now.
I understand where you're coming from. I think it was also us not knowing exactly what to do. Like, I think we've been around since 2015, 16. No one's ever gone through this sort of episode before. We had a few like advisors who've gone through the last, like recession, right? So they gave us some suggestions. It's going to power through. It's going to blow through. But it didn't. We weren't sure. We weren't sure what to do. So I think that's particularly one of the reasons why we decided to just like listen to the partners as well, because a lot of the partners we have globally rely on us to be successful for them to be successful. So they also had a lot of ideas to contribute, right? Say in the US, they would have a particular idea to contribute. In Europe, they would also have particular ideas to contribute, and APAC would also have different ideas to contribute. I don't think we sort of just listen and not do anything for like a long time, but I'd say at least I'd say 2 months of just trying to see like what was the best way forward. There on out, I mean, I think some of the other questions that Carola will ask later, we can walk through exactly what are some of the things we did. We threw virtual events, we did a fundraising campaign, you know, like just threw out like more products similar to you guys too, in areas in which we thought were useful. So yeah, Carl, I'd say at least a month or two. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Okay, then let's move a little bit about, let's talk a little bit about, you know, business culture. No? So what key factor of a business culture do you think makes more resilient in a crisis like COVID-19, like in a kind of pandemic or any kind of crisis? Who wants to go first for this one? Sean, would you like to start?
Sure. I think a common thing that will come up is to say agility, but that's pretty basic, right? When I really think about what things I valued during this last year, and I wish we had more of, it's probably things like resourcefulness or creativity, right? To be able to actually, I don't want to say think yourself out of the situation, but all of what these guys are doing in terms of ideas or what makes sense or listening or waiting. It's sometimes you just have to have a little bit of out of the box thinking instead of doing it's just, obviously we must just do this. No, it's not always like that, right? Something that we do a lot of is we talk about first principles, and I don't have to go into that, but the idea of that whatever it was before, it doesn't mean it's going to always work. You have to get to the root of something. I wish, I would say that's something that I wish we had more of, and it's something that it really helped us. And resourcefulness is actually, okay, fine, I might know now what I want to do, but how do I get it done? If you're surrounded by people that just don't know how to find the way or get it done or execute, it's kind of also dead end. I think the other couple, maybe it's just being decisive. And if you do it and execute the hell out of your plan. And figure out a way. And there's some more background. Carl and I, we were both ex-Rocket guys, and this is kind of the culture of execute, kind of like at all costs almost. Not at all costs anymore, but it just do the things you need to do. There might be certain things where, should I be careful about how I say this or how I treat somebody, or do I kind of tiptoe around something? Sometimes you just have to go, right? If you have so much money left, and you want to be nice to your team, you got to choose here, life or death. So being decisive here and just doing it because it just makes sense. You just have to have that ability to execute. And
what are your thoughts about this, Carl?
Yeah, so I wanted to add on that, and I think Sean, you're right. I think everyone's going to say agility or being agile is the answer, right? But how do you get to a point of being agile, right? And so I wanted to touch on that. I think for us as a business coach, from a business culture perspective, how we were able to move quickly was that there were high levels of trust within the organization, right? And how do you get to high levels of trust is that you have to have transparency, right? So what I've learned over the years is that if you can be radically transparent and people understand motivations for your decisions, they're more respectful and they're more receptive to those directions, and which allows you to be agile, right? So at the outset of the pandemic, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I basically told the team, hey, this trend since the first lockdown has resulted in a business collapse I think I publicly said it. I said our business was down 90% from the week before. And if we were to continue operating, the business would not be here by the middle of the year, right? And so I think setting the scene to the team then allowed everyone to be like, hey, we've got to move, right? This is urgent. And this is why tough calls are being made. We had projects that were canceled, just like Cynthia at Venurific. And we made those decisions very, very quickly. We didn't have the luxury actually to really strategize over a long period of time about what we were going to do. We kind of just had to make a decision, and we had to be very transparent with the team. And I remember at the time telling the team that, you know, this is what the business impact is, but also the decisions I'm making today are the best decisions I can make with the limited information that I have, right? And that everything is changing. And so I will be honest and tell you that no decision I make is going to be perfect, but we will have to just make a decision and learn along the way, right? So yeah, for us, that business culture of honesty allowed us to be agile. And I think as a 6-year-old tech startup, we've been through enough trauma that I think people were also used to the fact that, you know, tough times come and tough times go, right? So if you're resilient, you can get through really kind of bad times, as long as you have this kind of trajectory that's kind of going from the left to the bottom left to the top right in general. Your kind of path to get there will always be a roller coaster. So I think the people, I joke a little bit, but it's not that funny, but the people in our leadership team and especially the people that have been with the company since day one, we'd gone through enough kind of experience to know that, yeah, if there are kind of tough situations, if you're resourceful enough, and I like that word that Sean used, is you're resourceful enough, you can get through it, right? If you're resilient, resourceful, and then just over time, I guess I would say that the version of me as a leader today is a lot more honest than I was 5.5 years ago when we started the company, and where it's always sugarcoating everything. Yeah, the best way to get results, I think, is to be honest.
Okay, so basically we have resourceful over here, like Sean, agility. Then we have transparency and trust from Carl's side. How about best?
I think if you ask a lot of the businesses, like all of these, you know, in a span, it's been like over a year now, right? At some point or another, we'll all have to display it in some form. Maybe to not repeat a couple of things. There's just Cynthia's actually going to have a hard time, right? She's going last, so not to repeat what everyone else has said. I think one of the things that I think we did well as a company was we displayed a lot of empathy, because we also at the same time have to be very worried that a lot of the partners, a lot of the customers we're actually interacting with, especially on a global scale, have either one, personally been affected by COVID, or two, new people personally that were affected by COVID. So here I am trying to like chase down my sales pipeline. And on the other end, you know, like not asking them questions, not caring about how they're actually going through this pandemic is obviously going to make me not in one of their favorite, like not a person they probably want to call after the situation blows over, right? So we did that a lot. I mean, and also not just to external partners, but to our internal team as well. We're pretty global, right? So we have people sitting in India, we have people sitting in the Philippines and in Indonesia, like places that were quite massively hit by the pandemic. So I think having empathy really, I think, got us through as a team, and like you know, as a management and the leaders of the company, you really want to show that. I think team members really like stick through with you a lot more. I mean, I think we did it up to the point of actually like throwing out like a wellness, like a mental and a health wellness campaign, you know, getting in coach and like people in the space to actually help up and talk to us about how we can cope and get through this pandemic. And it was something that I think a lot of big companies did, but you know, as a company growing our size, also was something that I think we did and had a lot of good feedback on. And yeah, and so I think I'll add that. And of course, like the other thing that I think is similar to everyone else, right? The transparency and all being resourceful is I think we found like that it often worked in our favor to like over communicate rather than under communicate, because like you know, without being able to see team members or anyone in person for, this past while, things get lost, like in emails and like in things that you think you communicate, but like they don't actually really receive it. So we would email, we would hold a town hall, we would then follow up with one-on-ones and, like really over communicate everything from how the company is really doing to any changes that we may have to make, to like reprioritizing certain things that may affect your current work stream. So yeah, so I think those two that probably are a bit different. Yeah.
Just a curiosity, did you have to do, like, for example, coaching training, like coaching classes, or for example, support, like mental support, as you were talking before? So did you do something like that, like maybe having like a someone who was there to help the team and then support them?
Plenty. So we did, we sorry, I'm just gonna switch off my Slack here, work. So we did plenty of that, like throughout like, the pandemic. I think once we realized it was here to last, we probably gave the first 6 months just like, let's just see, maybe it'll blow over. When it didn't blow over, and like people were starting to feel like very stifled, right? Not seeing each other, not being able to achieve what they want to achieve. Yeah, we started holding like quarterly, monthly, sessions where we had coaches, like from anything, right? I mean, like I just recall one we did like 2 weeks ago, where he was he came in and he was a virtual training from Indonesia, talked to everyone about how do you stay sane in a world where you feel like you're responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very powerful sort of statement that as a company we made to the rest of the employees, to show that like we are going through the same thing, we understand like what everyone is going through, and like we're trying to help everyone. Yeah, so we do a lot of those. Yeah.
Thank you, Best. Okay, now moving to Cynthia, you have like, I think the hardest part now. Like, what was, let's say, a business culture that you think would be, was like the most resilient during this period?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat myself. I could not agree more with every single one of you. Teamwork and transparency, being resourceful. When tough time comes, good times come too. I could not agree more with the roller coaster ride. I think that's the entrepreneurial journey. I think the one thing that I would add is being adaptable. It's also kind of overlapping with resourceful. But I think one thing for us, for Venurific, was that we were being a pioneer in adapting to the changes that are presented in the industry, especially within events. It took a very big turn from being physical to fully virtual. So our team was paying a lot of attention to trends. So, when live streaming actually went viral, the whole team members actually got down together and brainstormed and said, hey, we need to be adaptable to what is happening right now in the industry. And let's drill down on how we can work together as a team to leverage on the fact that we have a productions team, we have all the equipments. Let's see how we can make this into something that can actually generate revenue for the company. So the whole team coming down together to being more attentive to the trends and being adaptable quickly as a company, I think that was one of the strongest factors that helped us to be resilient during COVID-19. And I think I want to add more context as well as to, having transparency and having that teamwork. I could not agree more, but one context that I would like to add is something that I'm really thankful to the team at Venurific, where, we actually share with them how much runway we have, what we may need to do. And we didn't want to let go of anyone, right? So we told them, hey, if anyone is willing to volunteer and say you want to take a, unpaid leave and just take a little bit of break from work, we would be happy to have any volunteers come to us and let us know. And actually, a lot of them, more than half of the team actually came to us with, wanting to sacrifice whether it's their pay or wanting to take a leave. And we were like, wow, you guys, really shocked us and in surprising us that you're willing to sacrifice this much for the company. So I think having that culture built up to a point when you're going through a tough time, that the team members are willing to sacrifice, that important livelihood, right? to our company, I think that was something that made us as leaders as well, to say, hey, we need to really stick through this. Like, this is tough time, but all our team members are depending on us as well. So yeah, that's something I want to add.
And did you manage to retain like all the employees, or like more or less?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. But in Malaysia, we had to close down the office. So we had to let go of the hires there. Yeah.
Understand. So since we are talking to you, Cynthia, I would like to move to the next question, right? Starting from you. So what trends adopted during the COVID-19, so during the pandemic, do you think will continue after the pandemic itself?
I think if I'm talking about the events industry specifically that we're in, I would have to say virtual events and live streaming. People definitely crave for that face-to-face connection still when it comes to events, but I think the events industry has changed entirely with the fact that we can connect with more people from different parts of the world virtually, and companies are actually able to save huge amount of budget on physical events when it can be not as sustainable with catering food and drinks and whatnot. So I think this virtual awakening to the events industry is definitely here to stay, even post-pandemic as well.
Then Carl, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think from our space, which is in blue collar worker management, I think there were two key themes that came out of the pandemic, which I think are going to last a very, very long time. One of them is the rise of e-commerce, right? I think it's well documented, right, that there was a boom in e-commerce, and it's interesting to see what things people were buying online during the pandemic and how that impacts an industry like ours. So whereas I think in the past, we saw people buying things like mobile phones, fashion, small items online, during the pandemic, furniture was a really big thing, right? People were buying furniture online where you typically would go to a showroom. They were buying air conditioning units, washing machines, TVs online. And now people are getting more comfortable. So we saw an opportunity here to actually work with a lot of retailers that had shifted to doing more e-commerce. So in Malaysia, Service Hero now does all the installation work for the aircons, TVs, and whiteware that is sold by Samsung online. So we're their exclusive kind of partner across the whole of Malaysia. If you buy anything online from Samsung, we do the installation work. Now, they were never able to fulfill these large items on an online platform effectively because they didn't have this partner that had nationwide coverage. So big shifts in growth in e-commerce, new segments of e-commerce that didn't exist before, which we've been able to be kind of a beneficiary of. Another thing that we saw firsthand was an outsourcing of blue collar labor that traditionally was in-house. So I'll give you some good examples, and we work with property developers across the region, many of which develop condominiums that have their in-house technicians. So handyman that will fix broken pipes, defects in a building. And prior to the pandemic, there was a large full-time payroll of these blue-collar technicians on site. A lot of these organizations decided that they were going to have to move people off their full-time payroll. So they decided to outsource that and have a cloud and flexible provider of blue-collar workers. So in Thailand, we work with large developers now that we are their cloud provider of technicians, right? And they've got rid of their full-time technicians on site. So I think we're going to see continuing trends of blue-collar workers being provided as a flexible workforce, right? Previously, we talked about flexible kind of gig economy platforms in a consumer sense, like residential home cleaners, or even Grab as a flexible on-demand transport solution. Now we're seeing the shift happen in an enterprise space in the blue collar segment. So that for us is the biggest observations that we've had. The shifts in kind of market behaviors and enterprise behaviors that we predict is going to continue post-pandemic, right? So once I've got a taste of actually, hey, you know what, I don't need my own full-time blue-collar workforce. I can just now make this an on-demand solution. I think post-pandemic, they're going to continue with this way of doing work.
Thank you, Carl. So we have like virtual events on one side, e-commerce and shifts in the markets and segments. So blue collars and let's say a different kind of approach of business, but also different kind of approach in terms of employees that can become flexible. How about your thoughts, Best? What do you think?
So I touch on this question a little bit in my first answer about how we saw, like, say, for example, out in North America, businesses already started transforming to go virtual, and that was in the space of real estate, right? So still be able to conduct their transactions and activities in the showing, the leasing, the rental market. You need to have technology like products in place to enable that. So that was one. And I think the trend that is probably the most relevant to us among all the digitization trends is really the contactless portion. And like, luckily for us, that's what we are in. So we are in the business of making sure people actually don't have to come in contact with each other when they want to go into your house, when they want to rent something that you own. So, that securing of those assets is something that we have been doing and allowing people to actually share access remotely. So that, I think, is the trend that we see because they've already invested money and resources in implementing. It's going to stay. Like, for example, one particular deal comes to mind, right? Over in Australia, not just that country, in a lot of other countries as well, where the sports industry actually saw like a pretty good traction. People are taking up tennis lessons and all sorts of lessons, just try to stay healthy. So, however, at the same time, these tennis club operators are mandated to not have any staff on site. So the concierge and the receptionists are not able to show up. So how do you actually facilitate the exchange of these like keys to the courts? So they came to us and we've been working them for the past like 6 to 8 months now to actually fit our padlock solution into the various fences and gates of the tennis courts, and work with booking platforms of these tennis courts, that so when you book an actual slot on any of the tennis courts across Australia, you get a PIN code that allows you direct access to that court. And then when you're done, you lock it up and you leave, right? So no point whatsoever in which you're contacting with another person, and you don't put the staff of the tennis clubs also at risk. So this is one example that comes to mind, but there are a lot of such that we've seen, whether it's a boat rental company, even in the car sharing space, especially when the peer-to-peer car sharing industry started in 2018, 2019, people were realizing that they're having this amount of investment sitting in the parking lot. So what to do, right? So let's rent it out. Like, let's rent it out on a peer-to-peer, like an Airbnb. But then now, like, you don't really want to do that, right? Because you don't want to actually meet someone else and give them the physical keys. So you use one of our key boxes mounted on the side of the car, and you actually have that person just come up, type in the PIN code, and then just drive off and then just return it. So these contactless trends, I mean, obviously we're all for human connection, but I think this is a trend to stay, and it does solve a particular problem. So I think this is something that I think as Igloo company we believe is going to continue in the next few years. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, apart from the fact that it's dangerous for the virus, but after that, I think it's simple, hassle-free, and it's smart, easy.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, we can work with someone like Carl to then come to the car, disinfect everything, and then just move on, right? As long as there's no two people there at the same time, like we're okay. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Best. And how about you, Sean?
Yeah, and it's probably going to be a little duplicates here, but I think a couple of key things then. I think about ourselves, how we've been, what we see in terms of, say, spending, and how companies got caught with the way they spend or the way they invested too much into, say, office space or people, and wanting to do things in-house. So to kind of echo what Carl's saying about blue collar workers, I mean, I think this trend is going to happen. It's going to continue for all the different industries, and it's something that we've seen. Again, the software development, whether it's this professional service or marketing, digital marketing or sales, sales as a service. These are even things that we shifted to because I didn't want to get caught into permanent, this permanent cost by people. So outsourcing this and having the flexibility to kind of cancel it or scale it up as I want to, I see this booming. And I think that the option to say not have to lock into 12 months or 2-year contract for your office space, I think there's a really good future for WeWork. Whatever you think, but I think that's going to be something we're all going to be moving towards. And I wouldn't want to be caught again in a situation like in Singapore last year, where I couldn't even, go to the office, and it would have been great to just be able to say, stop it. And that kind of goes along with the adoption of SaaS overall, right? And the ability to say, you know what, there's no reason not to implement something technical to automate, to get processes going, to kind of streamline my SOPs, instead of having an army of people doing these things. So still kind of a budgetary thing to get the most efficient you can. And then, other things with the movement towards, again, this kind of the move towards, say, e-commerce again, to say, why is Shopify booming? Why are these marketplaces coming up and they're taking off? Again, offline businesses that got caught with their pants down with no tech, they were not on an app, they were not on a platform. They were at the mercy of, say, for F&B, for Grab, and you're paying 30%. You're going to see more and more of these going with their own or getting onto some other option, but they're not going to get caught again without a way to reach out to customers online. And it would be just disastrous if you got caught a second time and you didn't prepare. So culture shift to overall, I think culturally, that's ability to do agile. And whatever the investments that companies make, I think that's going to also continue to move, and larger investment into tools to get more agile, which whether it's, we're going to always do Zoom. There's no reason not to be able to do calls. We're going to do Slack. We're going to always be able to see what's going on real time and do emojis and see, status. I see that just moving more and more towards that, and more investments into agility overall.
And would you have done anything differently over the years? Just moving to the next question, since we're talking.
For last year, probably I'd say 2 things. One would have been move even faster if that would have been possible, and been more decisive and do something, and not. I know there's this sort of idea of listening and waiting, but I would have actually moved faster. And the whole thing of fail fast, or just get something out there and then see and try. If I've done that earlier, I probably would have been in a better position. But at least did something, but that's something that I wish we did a little faster. The other is probably move on great people while they're on the market and make that investment. So at its peak, when people are out of jobs, that's probably the time to say, while everyone is letting go and cutting costs, this is the time to build up your strength, your bench strength, and look forward. If you can afford it, you plan for it, but it's something that it would have been good if I did something earlier, right? More pickings.
Yeah, but as Carl was saying before, with the knowledge that you had at that time, you do the best that you could do with the knowledge that you have. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I understand your point. And how about you, Cynthia? Would you have done something differently?
Yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't have anything I would have done differently. I think one thing would be that I wish our company had adopted to trends faster, but still stay focused on our goals. As mentioned previously, within the first 2 weeks, we developed a site called virtualbackgrounds.com to sell innovative, cool backgrounds. This was fun. It was a great venture to try and see if there will be, demand. So we definitely adopted fail fast method instead of listening method. So we did try, but I do wish and wonder if we had ventured instead into live streaming or even a virtual event platform to develop that earlier on, I wonder where we would be now, right? Like, for instance, Zoom, we use it so much more now than ever before. And there are so many companies that have exploded in growth, like, Hopin. They started in 2019, and within 2 years, they hold a valuation of over 5 billion USD. They are a virtual events platform. So this high extreme growth that has been accelerated by COVID-19 is something that, I wish I had foreseen and gone into instead. And another thing I would say is secondarily, if we had focused more on our original product, even though it is good to venture into different ones to see whether the demand will be there, it's also important to focus on our original product because now we have a CRM system that can help a lot of venues. But if we had gone into it earlier and gotten that government funding earlier on, I do wonder what it would have been like as well.
Understand also your point, but still, I mean, you should be already like proud of what you did. Like you thrived during these hard times, so yeah, you should be happy already. And let's move to Best. What have you done differently?
I think while we were sort of waiting on market feedback, right? Like one thing in the background we could have done was actually been more bullish with making more supply. While we were waiting, we actually paused that as well. And then when we came out, okay, let's make it. It was actually not possible. We were competing with a lot of like component shortage as a trend. And once we actually made it, shipping containers were very, very hard to secure. So I think looking back, I think everyone in the company would have said like we should have taken that risk to continue manufacturing, not have stopped it, because I think we should have trusted the team to be able to adapt fast enough and find new markets to churn out our products. And had we done that in hindsight, we probably wouldn't have had to take a dip in Q2 the way we did. I really think that's probably the only thing that comes to mind among many things. Are probably the biggest one that would have had a big impact on our business figures last year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Best. And Carl, last one.
We moved really quickly on many kind of initiatives, and I think looking back now, what I would have done differently is kill off some initiatives a lot sooner than I did. Now, one of the initiatives that we had is that we actually started producing our own disinfectants. So we actually got a factory set up in Malaysia, an outsourced kind of partner, OEM supplier, and developed our own brand of disinfectants, our own formulation, and set up an e-commerce store to sell disinfectants on a subscription model. And honestly, the demand wasn't great, and we kept it running for way longer than we should have. So we just turned it off last month, but I should have turned it off. I think nearly a year ago. Way much more effort than it was worth. I mean, look, we went from a tech company doing matching of customer to service provider to then establishing a warehouse in KL. A production facility and product design and scientists to formulate the freaking disinfectants. So I wouldn't do that again, and I'd kill it. Yeah, maybe I should listen more. Best, more listening time, not just doing things. Yeah.
Oh, okay, we actually have one question from the audience. It's asking, do you think COVID will emerge new professional skills? If yes, which one? Who would like to reply first? Or you want, Carl, please go ahead.
I think people will have to get better at communicating, right? So with the distance and these new mediums like video conferencing, the way you communicate is different, right? You don't have the benefit of like sometimes maybe body language or some other contexts of communication. So, perhaps you may have communicated with someone in a meeting room, and then there would have been a relevant post-meeting room interaction, like at the water cooler, that is just absence. so absent. So you've got to be very good at being very concise within and getting your point across in a Zoom or in an email or a short remote kind of instant message. So that professional skill, people are going to have to get better at communicating.
Anyone wants to add anything about this? We also have one more question. So yeah.
Just want to add real quick. So this is something, for example, where for even an HR person, that normally they wouldn't do this, right? But that I task them now to own, say, automation. So if you're dealing with emails or you're doing whatever process flow involving communication as well, team coordination, that there's a lot of things that are today manual that I would start to expect everyone, if you can automate it, whether with the Slack workflow or auto email that you set up with Automate.io or Zapier, that you should know this because that'll make your job, it makes you more valuable. And you close gaps, you ensure certain things will always be there and done, expected, and you have less kind of holes that crop up. So I would say automation skills.
But other than just like starting to use that, right? Because I've heard also, especially in the EHR departments, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing about the SaaS. What I'm saying, SaaS, it's built for consumers, people that don't know. They make it so that anybody could use these tools. So there's really no, you don't have to be a coder. Just go in and hook up, and you've got something done. And why not be an HR admin? You can, right? You can play with your phone. You can order pizza.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Anyone want to add anything? Okay, so we have one last question. We need to wrap this up quickly because we already exceeded 1 hour, but I actually wanted to hear the answer to this question. So what are you looking forward to this 2021? What are you expecting? Who wants to start first? Sorry, Best.
All right, so well, we genuinely hope the contactless, we do hope for the best of the pandemic, we get out of it soon. But that being said, like we do hope that like people continue to adopt the contactless measures. We do believe like that is the efficient way to do things. You don't really need to have manual like people to really like manpower, exactly resources to really do that, facilitate things where technologies can. So we do believe that, and we hope that continues. What else are we looking for? I mean, we're actually we're hoping that a lot of the countries we're going to open a little bit up more of their domestic travel scene, because one of our bigger markets is actually in the vacation rental space. We provide locks to properties that you can rent on Airbnb and the likes of those platforms. And actually, we did see a bit of that increase towards the end of last year, where families, couples were actually going on more vacation, but within the domestic travel space. So again, I think in Q1, people are getting a bit locked down again, although the US is coming up. So we do hope that even though international travel may not happen in 2021, that domestic travel will open. Restrictions, at least within the border, will minimize a little bit more. So that is something that I think we would also benefit from. And I think it's also good for everyone else as well to sort of just, maybe travel a little bit, especially even if it's in a small area. Yeah,
correct. We all look forward to it. Cynthia, how about you?
Yeah,
I think for me, being a SaaS software product, the beauty of it is that we can really expand digitally, even if without physical presence. So I think we're excited to actually expand into different regions in APAC, like Australia, where they're considerably doing better compared to the rest of the world. So we are looking forward to being able to expand during times like this, and being able to grow our product even further. But aside from that, I think, let's say post-pandemic wise, the one thing that I'm looking forward to most is, all that pent up demand in wanting to travel and wanting to celebrate and going out with your friends. I think that kind of pent up desires and demand will definitely help in fueling a lot of the economies that were hard hit during this time, like tourism and events. So I'm really excited to see what kind of recovery phase it will be like. I think a lot of people will be excited to go out and celebrate.
Correct. I wouldn't agree more. Sean.
Yeah, I think as part of what I'm looking for, if I share a little bit real quick. So when I launched JetDev last year, and just to share what the vision was, the vision is essentially to bring 1 million talented remote software developers online to help solve the world's biggest problems. Now, I was coming up with this because I was thinking, even right before the pandemic, this was the middle of January last year, before anyone knew, right? And I think it was just starting infections in China, and I was in China, and I told my company, the guys, I said, we're gonna do this, because look at all, I had this big slide on the wall, I said, look at all the problems the world's facing, we're gonna get 1 million developers online and do it. And then I leave for Singapore, I'm blocked there, and I just got back this week, right? I'm really looking forward to getting going on the vision, and I really think we're gonna make a dent in 1 million, but the idea that next year we could possibly have thousands of talented remote software developers helping to solve problems is a great thing for me to look forward to. And I think I'm already seeing the signs that that's happening, it's gonna happen, so.
Good luck with that. I hope we can manage to do so. And last one, Carl, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, look, I think very simple. Next week, I'm looking forward to getting my vaccine, and then I'm hopeful for open borders, so I can see more than just this little island of Singapore. Yeah.
Totally agree. Well, okay, we plenty exceeded our time, but it was really interesting conversation. Thank you, everyone, once again for joining us and for sharing your thoughts and your experience. And thank you, everyone, of course, for all the people who attended the webinar. And if you feel like, to ask anything to our speakers, just, connect with us, and then we will be very happy to put you in contact with them. Thank you once again, and see you very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.